today the topic which we are going to cover is groups, its nature, types and structure. By the end of this session, you will be able to understand the significance and nature of groups, and you will also able to differentiate between types of groups, and you will be able to learn the stages formation of the group, and you will gain knowledge about the group structure and its elements. Now, the topic related to groups sounds simple and we take this concept for granted, but dear students, let me remind you that groups are actually an indispensable part of our lives. Evolutionary theory suggests that groups are necessary for human survival. People are part of many groups and spend most of their time in the groups. We receive affection from groups. We learn from groups. We experience a sense of belongingness from groups. We feel protected as a member of groups, and groups that play a prominent role in our lives include our family, classmates, sports team, working organizations, and even larger groups which are significant in establishing our identity includes gender, nationality, and ethnicity. Critical analysis of group formation and its structure helps you to be a better team member and group leader as well. Let's go through some definitions of group. Now, group dynamics expert Marvin Shah emphasizes that all groups have one thing in common: their members interact. Therefore, he defines a group as two or more people who interact and who influence one another. Whereas another definition says a group as a collection of persons who are perceived to be bonded together in coherent unit to some degree. In this definition, it's mentioned as perceived. The basis of perceived coherence differs in different types of group. In common bond groups, which tend to involve face-to-face interaction among members, the individuals in groups are bonded to each other. Examples of these kind of groups include the players on a sports team, friendship groups, and work teams. In contrast, in common identity groups, the members are liked via the category as a whole rather than to each other, with face-to-face interaction often being entirely absent. For example, our national, linguistic, university, and even gender groups, where we might not even know personally all or even most of the other group members, are good examples of groups that we might identify with strongly, but not because the bond we have with other individual members of the group. The concept of groups is so multifaceted, and that's why experts hold different perspectives about groups, but both of them are right from their angle. Now, let's examine another definition. Kretsch and his team defines psychological group as two or more persons who meet the following conditions. The first condition is the relations among the members are independent and each member's behavior influence the behavior of each of the other. This is the first condition. Whereas the second condition, the members share on ideology. Now, the ideology is a set of beliefs, values and norms which regulate their mutual contact. So, now this definition is typically focusing on the nature of a groups. So, now let's try to understand the nature of a groups. There are different types of groups which are created for different purpose. Now, these different groups helps us meet different human needs, like for example, to affiliate, which means to belong to and connect to others. And the second type is to achieve something and even to gain a social identity by having membership in a group. Now, group consists set of properties which helps in identifying the group type. Not all the qualities prevails in all types of groups. They may vary depending on the type of group. The properties of group that provides the broad nature of the group includes: the first one is a feeling of unity exists among the members of a group. And the second important point is members declare themselves as a group. the group members first has to declare, they have to announce, and they have to define that they are a group. So this is one of the major criteria for a group. Now group members experience a feeling of belongingness as they support each other in performing a particular task, and group members exhibit similar motives, interests and drives. Now this is a major criteria for group to form. For example, you all students have common interests to opt for subject of psychology, and which in return motivated you and drived you to opt this particular subject, and hence you formed a group. Group consists both verbal and non-verbal communication. So as you can see, in verbal communication, it is about articulating, directly communicating, whereas coming to non-verbal communication, it is all about eye contact, body posture, proximity. Proximity means nearness they maintain, and even touch. So all these things includes in a group communication. The another important point is group members have mutual expectations. These expectations include cooperation, empathy and affection. Every group has some social characteristics which separate it from similar and dissimilar groups. These characteristics affect the members of the group. There is a time frame for the groups, like some groups may exist for short period of time. For example, members of a group for 2-day training program. Now this is a short period, whereas some other groups may exist for longer time. For example, you all be members of a group for 3 years of your bachelor degree, which is a long frame of time. Another important point to remember about the nature of a groups is groups are formed based on some norms, customs and procedures, and which are accepted by all members. And if any member goes against them, see, there are the chances that sometimes a member can go against the norms, then they may face consequences. Consequences can be rejecting the person or expelling the person or warning the person in the group. Let's start with understanding the types of groups. There are variety group types. Basing on the properties, groups can be classified into different types. Broad classification of groups can be done basing on nature of relationships, established norms and we versus they feeling. Well, let's discuss various classifications of groups. Now the first categorization of groups can be primary groups and secondary groups. Now primary groups plays prominent role for individual survival and identity in the society. Mostly primary groups are pre-existing in an individual's life, like sometimes we can't choose our primary groups. For example, family and religion. Primary groups show significant impact on the development of values, our ideals. Now on the other hand, individuals have choice to choose their membership in the secondary groups. In contrast to primary groups, relationships among the secondary groups are less impersonal, indirect and intimacy. Examples include your school, college for secondary groups. Well, groups can also be classified in a different way, that is formal and informal groups. Now these groups differ in terms of structure, which means the norms, position, roles are well established in formal groups. Now formal groups are formed to fulfill specific official requirements and on the grounds of specific rules or laws. Now formal groups consist a systematic structure and in hierarchical form. Institutions and organizations are the best examples for formal groups. Informal groups do not have definite rules. They are often formed based on some common likes, interests and attitudes. Unlike formal groups, in informal groups, no one has importance due to designation. Any interest group come under this informal group. For example, if you are a member of animal welfare NGO, that can be considered as informal group. Another possible categorization or classification is in-group versus out-group. The group with which individual identify him or her is called in-group, while the group with which an individual does not identify with is referred to as outgroup. We versus they feeling an individual develops towards in-group versus out-group respectively. We often tend to perceive our in-group members as more favorable, is it not, compared to out-group members, while out-group members are perceived negatively. In-group feeling make us experience a sense of belongingness. I mean, we feel secure, while social issues like stereotypes, prejudice and discrimination are caused by out-group feeling. People develop and result in group conflicts. Groups can also be classified based on perceived coherence amongst the particular group members. And you know, this phenomena is termed as entitativity. Students, this is an important point for you to stress and remember, which simply indicates high similarity within the group members and clearly defines its distinctiveness from other groups. 4 distinct types of groups based on sense of perceived entitativity can be categorized as. So, apart from the earlier combinations, let's discuss 4 more types. The first is intimacy groups. Now, these groups are smaller in size and members of the group are very close and are usually affectionate with each other like family and close friends. Whereas, the second kind of group is task-oriented groups. Now, members of these groups possess high coordination to accomplish a particular task, and often different roles will be assigned to the members of the groups. Example is sports team and work groups. This is just similar to a formal group which we discussed earlier. Now, the third category is social categories. It is a collection of individuals who may not interact but share some similar characteristics and together experience a sense of identity. Now, coming to the fourth and final category is weak social associations. Now, these groups include where the sense of unity is weak, like people in the neighborhood or people attending an interview for the post. So, as you can see, all 4 groups, the first one is very strongly bonded when compared to the second and third, and the fourth category is very weakly bonded. So, as we are clear with understanding the types of groups, let's start understanding how does actually a group forms. So, there are sequential developmental stages. Another possible classification is the stages formation of the group. So, you might think that forming a group is simply about choosing to work with some of your friends, but that's not the case. However, when you work together in a specific group activity, your relationship with each other needs to become professional. Now, before this can be achieved, the group may go through certain stages. Group formation and development over time is a complex interplay of needs, goals, attraction and communication. Now, Bruce Tuckman has developed one of the most well-referenced model in which there are 5 stages of group development, namely forming, storming, norming, performing and adjourning. Now, most groups progress through these stages. Each stage builds on the previous stage and prepares the group for performing. Moreover, these stages of group formation are meant to be followed in exact sequence as they are explained. The stage number 1, forming. Now, forming is a stage which is characterized by some confusion and uncertainty. Forming is actually an orientation period when members get to know one another and share expectations about the group. This is the initial stage when the group comes together and members begin to develop their relationship with one another and learn what is expected of them. Second stage, that is storming. So, as you can see, the name itself is saying storming, which indicates this is the most difficult stage where the participants undergo a kind of frustration, stress. they might undergo a kind of confusion and they might have adjustment difficulties, difference of opinions, and they might undergo negative emotions. So it is a role of a leader to take care of a participants and adjust it at this phase. So storming is a stage where one can see highest level of disagreement and conflict. Members mainly voice their concern and criticism occurs at this stage. Actually, in this stage, interpersonal conflicts arise and differences of opinions about the group goals also emerge. It is important to work through the conflicts and this time and to establish clear roles during this stage. The stage 3 is norming. It is characterized by recognition of individual differences and shared expectations. Responsibilities are divided among the members and the group decides how it will evaluate the progress. So here the adjustment process also started and participants started imbibing and digesting. So if the group resolves its conflicts, it can establish a pattern of how to get its work done. Expectations of one another are clearly articulated and accepted by members of a group. And now comes the most important phase, that is performing. It occurs when the group has matured and attains a feeling of cohesiveness. In this stage, members of a group make decisions through a rational process that is focused on relevant goals rather than emotional issues. Issues related to roles, expectations and norms are no longer of major importance. The group is focused on its task, working effectively to accomplish its goals. And comes the stage 5, adjourning. So it indicates that the members of a group often experience a feeling of closure and sadness. As you know, this is the stage where now they have to say bye-bye, and it's a stage of a farewell as they prepare to leave. It is a final stage when the group, after achieving the objectives for which it was created, starts to gradually dissolve itself. So these are the 5 stages which usually a group undergoes for forming. So as we are clear how do a group evolves eventually through the 5 stages, now let's go through the concept of structure of a group. Groups are not unorganized or just haphazard collection of people, but it is an organized system of interactions and relationships regulated by group structure. Group structure can be defined as a layout or design of a group. The structure of a group determines the relationships of members to one another. The structural elements that help the members understand who is responsible for what task, what kind of behaviors are expected of group members. So now let's see why the structure of a group is so important. So the significance of a group structure includes the group structure can create strong bond which can be long lasting. And especially in organizations, group structure ensures systematic and smooth functioning. A group structure clarifies the role to be played by the members of a group. So it gives a clarity like who has to do what. Now understanding group structure allows us to understand behavior, values, mission and goals. Now group structure governs how members think, behave and socialize. Group structure ensures that communication takes place among the members effectively because there is a hierarchy built, there is a clarity who would communicate with whom. And group structure also makes interpersonal situations predictable. Now let's see what structural elements are and how these elements shape a group structure. There are 4 elements, or I would say components of group structure, and these are position, status, roles and norms. These concepts might be overlapping, but you have to clearly go to the concepts to understand. So the first one is position, which is the rank a person holds within a group is termed as position. According to position of a member in a group, he or she might get status and role to be followed. So, position is associated with the status. Now, coming to the second structural element, the prestige. Status is nothing but the prestige associated with the rank person is holding in a group is referred to as status. So, higher the status of a member holds, more he or she will be valued and considered prestigious. All the members within a group may have some status. Members in the top of a hierarchy have high status like the leader in a group, whereas many groups have hierarchies with members differing in status. They rank within a group, and sometimes it is not explicit and instant. It is simply the older timers in a group who are accorded higher status compared to newcomers. So, it's just like seniors and juniors. Okay. So, now people are often extremely sensitive to their status within a group. You know why? Because it is linked to wide range of desirable outcomes. Everything from respect and deference from other group members to material benefits such as salary received. So, that can be intrinsic or extrinsic by nature. So, now the third element is roles. Different people perform different tasks and were expected to accomplish different things for the groups. In short, they play different roles. Roles specify the types of behaviors expected of individuals who occupy particular position within the group. Sometimes roles are assigned. For instance, a group may select different individuals to serve, maybe like a leader, treasurer, or a secretary. Now, coming to the fourth element is norms. So, norms, as its name is indicating, we already seen under the formation of group, are a set of rules that inform people about what is expected of them. Norms are the expected standards from members of a group which are agreed to implement by a groups. Now, norms provide consistency and predictability to members as well as to the group behavior. In organizational settings, these norms can be in the form of explicit rules. For example, flight attendants or air hostess are told they must always smile at the customers. Or even in a hotel, you can see the attendants, they have to have a nice gesture and they have to smile at the customers no matter whatever their emotions are. So, this is a norm set by an organization and it is expected by an employee to follow it. These are the four major pillars of a structure of a group. Well, let's conclude this session with quick review. We defined the concept of group emphasizing on importance and interaction and perceived coherence. Then we try to understand the nature of a groups followed by types of groups like primary versus secondary, formal versus informal, in-group versus out-group. Then we discussed about stages of group formation, which includes forming, storming, norming, performing and adjourning. Finally, we spoke about significance of group structure along with elements, namely position, status, rules and norms.